Hey guys, welcome back for this very last session of the day. And what a session with all the jury members of the AI Song Contest 2021. They will give you feedbacks and thoughts on the experience as jury members. The host is Dr. John Ashley Burgoyne. John Ashley, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. The point of this session and this evening, now that we know the results of the song contest, is just to hear a little more from the jury about what was it like to make a decision in a context like this. And so I have with me here today, of course, the award-winning composer, recording artist, and tech enthusiast Imogen Heap, who also made a splash in my own research area with the Happy Song, a gift to parents everywhere. I have the Associate Provost for Creative Technologies at the California Institute of the Arts, Ajay Kapoor. I have the songwriter, tune composer, professor at the Berklee College of Music, Mark Samos. And I have the winner of the AI Song Contest 2020, music, sound, and technology company Uncanny Valley. My name is Ashley Burgoyne. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Amsterdam, and I was also in charge of organizing the public vote this year. And so what I would like to do in this panel is just to first briefly give you some fun facts and statistics about the public vote, and then we're going to zero in on each of our jury members to hear more from them about what was it like to come up with the jury points for the AI Song Contest. But let's start, just for everyone to remind ourselves, not the overall winner of the contest, but who was the public's favorites in the AI Song Contest 2021. Let's move to the next slides and listen to yet again and see a bit of the video from I Feel the Wires from Team AimCat. Next slide.
Becoming who I've always been within, as I'm feeling this new soul. I feel the wires, my blood flows and my heart beats. Now feel the lapse, I feel the lapse. I keep discovering new things.
All right, thank you. If we move on to the next slide, just some statistics about what happened at the contest. So we had 38 songs, 3,759 voters, and these voters often voted for more than one song, about 1.5 on average. So we had almost 6,000 votes in total, 5,906. If we move on to the next slide and we see where they came from, we see that actually the Spanish voters really dominated the contest. More than 1,200 of the voters came from Spain. There were 72 countries that participated in total, but after Spain, the leading countries in terms of voters with about 300 each, the United States, Korea, France, Great Britain, and the Netherlands. But there were some pretty important differences between these countries. And if we move to the next slides, first let's have a look at how many votes the voters in each country actually gave. So the Spanish voters, there were a lot of them, but on average, they voted for just over one song. Most of the Spanish voters voted for one song and one song only. The winners of the song contest in terms of being the most thorough and listening to the most of these 38 entries was actually Australia, the home of Uncanny Valley, with an average of 3 songs per voter. Now, if we move to the next slides, we can also see that there were important differences in the average voter score per country. Some countries had friendlier voters than others. The Chinese were actually the friendliest voters with an average score of 11 for every song that they voted for. And the Swedes were the strictest with an average score of only 7.2 for all of the songs that they voted for. And if we move on yet again to the next slides, we can look at what the percentage of what I call groupies per country. What does that mean in this contest? So groupies are the people who voted for one song and one song only and gave that song a perfect score. And the trouble with that kind of voter is that you just don't really know, is this someone who really did listen to one song and just fell in love with it and gave it a perfect score? Or is it someone who wasn't really listening that carefully and was just voting for their friends? You don't know for sure. Maybe you want to correct for it in some way. But we also see across the countries that there's an enormous difference in the number of these groupie type voters. More than 80% of the voters from China and Spain were people who voted just once and gave a perfect score, whereas only 40%, actually less than 40% of the voters from Hungary and again, Australia were these groupie type voters. So if we move on to the next slide, we'll see what the raw scores were. So this is what we used in the official results. But you could ask yourself, all right, if I tried to correct for these differences in voting behavior, what would I do? And what you do is you basically say, what would these scores have looked like if every single voter actually had voted for every single song? So everyone gets the benefit of the very, very nice voters who always give perfect scores, and everyone gets punished a bit by the Swedish voters who only give people an average of 7.2. How would that have changed the results if we did this? So I made an approximation, a correction for this. And just so you know, if we move to the next slide, you can see how the scores might have changed a little bit. So the biggest change was actually the Korean song Han, which was fairly low in the raw scores. Actually, was a pretty close second. If you run simulations, there's about a 10% chance they even could have come out to be the public winner of the entire contest. But because of the particular way the judges broke down, didn't end up doing as well in the scores. Other songs that actually did a lot better after you kind of assume every judge voted for everyone are Quantum Trap and Evikt Forlorat, two other songs that actually really raise a lot in the ranks after you after you make this correction. So now let's move on to the next slide and just zero in on. So I wanted to use the jury's top five, but there's actually a three-way tie for fifth place. So we'll look at the top seven from the jury, and we'll see where those were. And you can see that there actually really wasn't complete agreement between the public votes and the jury votes. So we have, Korean Han, Kokudoro Mente Ya, Listen to Your Body Choir, Quantum Trap, Last Moment Before You Fly, Evikt Förlorat, and Vessel we have as the jury's top seven. And let's move to the next slide and then actually compare these adjusted scores from the public vote and the scores from the jury. You see that actually lower on this list, there's pretty good agreement between the way the public ranked these songs that were at the top of the jury. But there are two songs that really stand out. So Han and Koku Duermente Ya are two songs that the public just seems to, the jury liked them. I mean, they were in the top, but the public really loved them. And what I would say would be the two most notable differences. Now, why might these differences be, and what do we want to hear about from the jury? If we move to the next slide, we can see that there actually are important differences in how the public was voting and how the jury was making their decisions. So the public was asked, do you like this song? Do you think it's original? Would you recommend it to a friend? And for songs that did have lyrics, we asked for information, do you like the lyrics? But we actually did not include that in the final score because it wouldn't be fair, because not every song had lyrics, of course. But these are really all based on, do you like the song? They're about the product. They're not so much about the process. Whereas the jury read these sometimes very lengthy process documents, as we heard from Imogen Heap, and they were evaluating criteria such as workflow, the creative use of AI, diversity and ethics, and the quality of the human AI collaboration, in addition, of course, to the quality of the song itself. And so what I'd like to do for the rest of this panel is just speak with the jury members to hear a little more about how they weighed all of these considerations. So you can move to the last slide just to close the presentation down. And then I would like to move directly on, for starters, to Imogen Heap. So as our first juror on the panel. So Imogen, what was the most important aspect for you while you were evaluating these AI song contest entries? You already said that Han was your favorite, but why?
Well, I just liked it. I mean, our first question, the way we voted was, do you like the song? What do you think? Do you think it's a good song? Do you think it's original? So we still had that, but as a first test listen. And then we looked at our process documents and then gave it a score. once we had heard it. So we kind of heard it as the public heard it first, without understanding the process, and then we took into consideration that into our voting once we read the process. So for me, yeah, one of my favourites just to listen to was Hum. I love the voice, the direction of the voice. I really like the beats. But it just appealed to me aesthetically. Yet others didn't appeal to me quite so much aesthetically. But whereas when it came to the process, then we understood the depth of their contribution with AI, and the collaboration and the workflow. Yeah, that obviously changed things. So for me, it was tough because, you know, I'm a musician. Like I'm like anyone who we listen to music, and how do we feel? It's visceral. We can't, you know, we have this direct emotional reaction, and so it's hard to kind of put that aside, you know, and be objective about the voting and about the process. But it was very interesting. And I did find it, yeah, tough to kind of go through all of that information. I learned a lot. I was actually doing a lot of Googling on information to try to find out what certain words meant, and what was this type of software that somebody was using, and this thing over here. I didn't know a lot of the acronyms. But yeah, so it's very educational. And I would love it for the public to have seen that information too. But, you know, maybe next time. We'll see.
Maybe next time. Yeah, indeed. Well, that's actually very interesting. So shall we move on to Mark? Did you have a similar experience, you know, where you were listening? Was it, and which song, actually, I don't think we do know what your favorite was. Are you willing to tell us, you know, which was your favorites and what you were looking for when you went through these entries?
Yeah, well, first of all, I should say my perspective is a little different because I teach songwriting. And so I spent a lot of time working with student songwriters, getting them to think about, you know, what's really the core aspect of songwriting in terms of melody, lyrics, harmony, how all those put together. And sometimes, you know, student writers are a little quick to turn to production and those other elements. And I'm always kind of emphasizing, are the bones of the song really strong? So I was listening for that, you know, obviously, like what songs appealed to me just in terms of the songwriting craft. But like Imogen, I'm a newbie as far as the underlying technology. I was involved in the AI field, you know, back several centuries ago in my other career, but this was definitely a deep dive into a lot of inside baseball in those process descriptions, which was a great education. But I was really looking for projects where the linking between the melody and the lyrics and the harmony felt like what great songwriting does. You know, that it's not just lyrics over on this side and melody here, but it's the interconnections of those things. And so although I love traditional folk music, and I loved the songs that had like a strong background in traditional musical styles, overall, I actually think the Listen to Your Body Choir succeeded the best in terms of integrating all of those aspects that we were talking about. And I could say more about that, but reading their process description as well as listening to the song, it all kind of tied together in a really great way.
Well, there are, I mean, still branches of AI. I mean, supervised machine learning that is still sometimes taught as learning with a teacher, learning from a teacher. So it sounds like that you in a way kind of wished you could be a teacher for all of these individual AIs.
Or a learner as
Yeah.
well. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you. Shall we move on actually to Ajay? So, what was the process like for you? What were you looking for in these entries? And do you have your own personal honorable mention?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I come from a different angle as being someone who's been working like deep with AI for the last 15 years in this space. I was completely blown away by the process documents, and really to see how far all of these algorithms have gone and how people were using multiple algorithms to actually make music. So I do think, like Mark and Imogen, that the music itself was very important, and I did take a pass just listening. But then when I dived into the process documents, that's where really the outliers started emerging. And it wasn't just it wasn't just using AI in one place. So it was people who used AI in multiple aspects of the song. That's what really blew me away. So people were using natural language processing to generate the lyrics. People were then using things. I remember there was to actually figure out, what the chord structure is, or what the melodies are, or what the rhythms are, or using, tools that deal with the production using AI and have it auto mixed. And it's like they're using so many aspects of AI to actually create the song. And again, it's that symbiotic relationship between human and machine that really got and brought the best pieces to the table. For me, my honorable mention would be Quantum Trap. I thought it was a great song, as well as just amazing explanation and documentation of how these were done. I also feel that a lot of these process documents should be published because they'd be really useful for people in the future trying to create songs with AI to learn and be inspired on how actually these people have done this.
That's interesting. And indeed, you are the only people really who have seen all of the process documents or had access, at least to to a large number of them. For various reasons, they haven't been made public. So, if there was any one thing, Ajay, that you out of the process documents, not necessarily a team, but a concept, like what do you think the public should most know from the process documents that you saw?
I think it's like the flow diagrams. The flow diagrams explaining the workflow on how they built the song it really sheds light on how things were made. And to me, I really liked the song, but then when I actually saw how they were using AI, I would end up liking it more because it's like, wow, you made a great song despite using all this technology.
Excellent. All right, thank you very much. And Uncanny Valley. So really the same question for you. What were you all looking for? And indeed, how did you even work as a group? On this. What were you looking for as a group when you were evaluating the songs on the jury? And do you have your individual or group honorable mention from everything you looked at?
Yeah, it's a good question. We had a great evening of robust conversation. We're a team of songwriters, composers, music producers, as well as academics, sort of multidisciplinary team. So to Ajay's point, I think we did the same. We listened to songs, and then when we saw some of the in-depth processes, we marveled at the way that those processes had been intertwined with traditional songwriting and music production. I guess that was what was most exciting about it. It was like sort of opening a little Christmas present with every song and sort of then discovering and unpacking what actually went into it, and the deeper storytelling that we found with the AI processes intertwined with the songwriting. But our special mentions, Justin?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say when we were judging it all as a team, we had quite a lot of discussion about what makes a song, what makes a track, what makes this music. I mean, it's we kind of settled on a rule that if you could play it on a guitar around a campfire, that kind of made it a good song. If you could hear it as a nice well produced track, then on a stream or on the radio, then that makes it a good track. We had a lot of trying to figure out what is the song the track, is the track the song, when we were judging it, and it was sometimes hard to separate those things, and adding the AI element on top of that was a further aspect of judging that we had to kind of factor into those those questions. So yeah, look,
Body Choir was
Choir
a
Body Choir
favourite.
stood out for us.
And Han, you were a big favourite of
Yeah.
Caroline in the back.
Big fan of Han.
Big fan of Han.
But as far as process documents go, I think Quantum Trap, as RJ said, has a really excellent process document. And I think they were probably one of the main teams to bring up the issue of ethics and the concept of plagiarizing and with data sets. So I thought that was a really interesting area to be heading to.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, I think the ethics, that's something I'd like to come back to later. But before we do, just to push a little more on this idea, because I'm not sure it's going to be clear to everyone, what is the difference between a track and a song?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think.
Is there?
Imogen, you go.
Yeah.
No, it's just I found the same. You know, you could write a song that's like got 3 words in it, or a track that's got 3 words in it, but it's like maybe wildly successful, or it doesn't have any beats in it, or it's just, or it has like no chorus. So it's hard to define in this day and age what a song should be. So yeah, I did find that if we're going for the traditional, dictionary of a song, then perhaps some of these would have got less high scores. But in the modern context of what a song is to people these days, you have to include the track, the production, the experience.
The last moment before you fly, we were going to say, as an instrumental, was a very interesting
track.
Case in point, and pushed and pulled at the notion of what is a song. And I found myself looking back into the songs that had been top 10s historically, over the decades, on popular charts that were instrumentals. And obviously, as we all know, there aren't many, and how did they become hits? And I guess it was the deep storytelling and the melodic structure, that got them there. But in this case, yes, what is a track? What is a song?
The prosody, the formation of hooks within the melody, tied to lyrics, the emotional journey that takes you on. I mean, a lot of the songs in the contest had that, but a lot of the songs didn't. So, but they also had, the ones that didn't might have had good production. So
yeah,
it was hard to kind of place them all within the same
universe,
judging schema.
I remember as to the last moment, that instrumental thing, that was rated very highly by our kind of team of judges. And we struggled a little bit with the issue of no lyrics, but lyrics were not required as sort of one of the entry characteristics. But what I also remember about their process document that was really unique about that project, I thought, was the way that the composer got a sense to sort of train the data on their specific individual artistic work, so that they felt like they were actually having a kind of conversation with their own sort of stylistic corpus, which I thought was a really unique aspect of that, and gave it a really kind of personal feel. Also, Ashley, I didn't realize your first question was also asking for our honorable mention plate. You snuck up on me. And if I can just take a minute to say, my honorable mention would definitely be the song Coco.
Okay,
and
why?
It's relevant to the question that you brought up. It was a beautiful song. I think that it's a subtle song in terms of, what it creates and the differences between traditional material in that style and what they generated. But their process documents showed, especially with this question of ethics and diversity, an incredible sensitivity to the issues of picking the original set of material for their training set. They did a lot of thinking about the sort of ethnographic facts on the ground about, what constituted a particular genre of the lullaby, genre that they were working with. And that's the kind of respect for, if you're going to work with neural network-based AI, then the curatorship of your data set is part of your artistic process. Yeah. And I thought that their project really showed a lot of attention and awareness of that, which I really respected.
I really love that one too. I love the lyrics. When they, put some ideas as a Coco, this character that comes in your dreams, that comes when you go to sleep. No, sorry, it doesn't come if you go to sleep. That's the thing. And there was something in the way that the kind of AI spat out some lyrics that twisted it around. And I can't remember the exact lyric, but it was something like Coco, the idea that Coco would die if you did go to sleep. So who's going to save Coco? And that
Yeah,
twist
sort of
on
flip to the point of view in this really intriguing way that
yeah.
seemed like how an AI would sort of semi-misunderstand human lyrics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's that exact tiny little bit there, isn't it? That just that one tiny suggestion that would come from an AI that may not come from you at that precise moment as a songwriter, that then inspires you off to go down a whole different trip and kind of look at lyrics in a different way and choose those ones and kind of cultivate those ones out there. And that's really exciting. It's just those, you know, when people say, oh, AI is going to make better music than humans, I'm like, no, the combination, you know, it's that sparring partner that you find in those anomalies that allows you to kind of push your creativity further than you would have done if you just, you know, gone to your usual patterns.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It makes well. I mean, I guess all of you were involved in the contest because you were interested in this co-creation aspect, and I'm happy. I didn't coordinate, you know, this bit, but that you all really had individual honorable mentions all at the top is very, very nice. I would like to push all of you now on why, if you have any ideas, you know, your favorites, if you will, after looking at the process documents, may have differed from the public favorites. So there is this obvious, okay, to some extent you were looking at different things, but do the public winners surprise you? You know, is there anything that you hear there? You said at least that many of you actually, even for the songs at the jury top, initially listened to them with this, you know, this is new to us, we haven't looked at the process document yet, but now looking back on all of this, knowing how it turned out, yeah, what was the public wrong? You know, it was, you know, was there something that they didn't need to know? Like what's going on there?
Well, if I might butt in, I think that, you know, like you said, when you looked at the data about how people voted, it's hard, isn't it? Because it's not like everyone's sitting there, you know, and being very like, okay, I'll give everyone a fair shot. I'll listen to everything very carefully. You know, that's not how people voted. So already in that space, it can't, you know, perhaps there could be a way in future where everybody has to listen, you know, or they have to listen to at least 5 or something like that. So they can't just be like that one, everyone go here, don't listen and just vote. So I think, yeah, that's obviously a major difference. But yeah, understanding the process of what was AI driven, what was human driven, it wildly differs how you listen to a song. If you think, oh, what really beautiful lyrics, must have been a human, or what really awful lyrics, it must have been an AI, and actually you discover that actually no, they were actually completely human written, which is, there were a couple like that. So yeah, I think I would like to. I think it'd be great to open kind of the bonnet and give that to the public next time to really be able to vote fairly on the contest, which is it's an AI song contest, and they don't know which part of it was AI and which wasn't.
Yeah, no, that's very nice. Does anyone else have something they'd like to say about that?
We might just Ajay, you go.
Oh, I was just gonna say you could let the public know what's going on in a simple way. It doesn't even have to be like the full technical things that the jury got. It could even just simply be like, AI was used for the lyrics, for melody, for the chords, like very simple words, not like how. Because you know, a lot of songs used AI for, I don't want to say just the lyrics, but it's like, okay, then you know that's that, or they used it just for the melody, or they used it just for production and for auto mixing, you know. So it's like it gives you an idea of what's going on, and I think it will help annotate. And I do agree with what Imogen's saying. It's like how, and you talked in the beginning, you know, how do you make sure it's not just a popularity contest, and as opposed to all of us who've spent, you know, days of our life, you know, listening to all these things, and to the betterment of all of us. So it's a different process.
Yes, and Uncanny Valley, you wanted to respond?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I guess it was relevant to note that last year's Universe was quantifiable, and that the word Eurovision had been added to the AI Song Contest, and so it was you know, there were boundaries around the creative, well, not just the data inputs, but the intention of the creative outputs as well. So I mean, you've only got to look at the use of popular charts of music and having hip hop, R&B, indie. You know, this is how human appreciation has been sort of categorized into songs, and how we like songs more than others or appreciate songs more than others. So yeah, I guess in this competition you saw everything from you know, beautiful folk songwriting all the way to progressive electronica. And I guess how do you compare songs in such broad genres? So I don't really have the answer as to what happens maybe next year or in the future, but we may see that there are categories of styles or genres that will make it easier for everyone to sort of appraise like for like.
Yeah, it's a surprisingly diverse contest. You know, it makes it tricky, and I mean, popularity contests also aren't necessarily bad. They're a part of the music world as well. But Mark, you had one thing you wanted to say about this, and then we have a question from the public that I'd like to bring in. But Mark, why don't you round off this topic for us?
Sure. Well, I think another way to think about this is you know, as I said, there's nothing wrong with a popularity contest, but it's, I think, worth remembering that people are trying to apply this technology in a lot of different ways. And I think that there are probably some pretty strong economic forces in the mainstream music industry that are looking at these technologies with the idea of how can we actually maximize, you know, hit songwriting and, you know, maximize our company revenue with, you know, some of the same kinds of concerns, you know, they're showing up in non-musical areas. Whereas part of what I think was so delightful for all of us in reading the process descriptions and the collaborations with these musicians and technologists is that musicians love to break things. Musicians love distressing materials and edge conditions and using technology in ways that, you know, at the point where it breaks down and interesting things happen. And so I think, you know, another way to think about it is our goal to prove that AI can produce a, you know, a song that sounds like a mainstream hit, you know, pop song? Or is our goal to have the AI technology help us find some weird ass stuff that we wouldn't necessarily come up with on our own? I mean, when I saw, you know, do the Cars do push-ups in Listen to Your Body Choir, I was just like, I would love to have an assistant tell me come up with a line like that. You know, so there's also a question of like, what is your goal in applying the technology? Are you trying for innovation, or are you trying for down the road kind of stylistic, you know, normative things?
I like that. Well, that actually, in a way, actually loops back to this question from the public, and we'd all mentioned it earlier. So it's a different angle on it, but this question of diversity and ethics, and how much that should be part of this process, and in particular how exactly you evaluated that as a jury. What does it mean to be a diverse and ethical AI co-created song?
Mm. Yeah, I really appreciated when people did. Not everyone did talk about that, so it was hard to gauge, you know, what the situation was. But I really did appreciate when people went out of their way to like make sure they weren't plagiarizing. You know, like we had the Last Moment Before You Fly, Galuni. They only created all their training set on his own work. And the same with yeah, we mentioned it earlier. Who was it? I can't remember now. Somebody else.
No, it was that same group. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because I would love to see some kind of stamp or some kind of like we have GMO foods. You know, what is, you know, been tampered with, or what are you buying? What are you eating? What are you watching? Are you watching a video, a Photoshop, or are you looking at a Photoshopped image, or are you looking at a real person like with no filter? To have some kind of understanding, some kind of stamp, some kind of code that you could read and just be like, oh, okay, or that you could ingest, you know, if you're listening to music and you have your own AI looking around the world for music, to understand instantly, okay, this bit is done like this bit is done like this. It's say if you're a movie producer and, you know, you want somebody to generate some music for you, do you pay more for an AI? Do you pay less for an AI? It's an interesting topic, and I think that's part of the reason that quite a few musicians are scared, is that that line is very blurred, and it's going to get increasingly more blurred. So to have some definition or truth already in how musicians are, or what part of it is it? 90%? Is it like made by Duke Tech and something, or how do we make that clearer so everyone's on the same page and upfront about it?
Yeah, that's do other panelists have something to say about the ethics diversity, how you brought it in to your
So I definitely agree that the training data is a big part of the ethical aspects. Like, if I'm musician A and I wrote a song, and then musician B uses my song as part of their training set, do I win too? Musician A win as well? So it's like, and let alone the thousands or millions of things that are going on to make all these algorithms. There's so much for our community to figure out. And there's something about overfitting, which we're doing when we're training it only on our own music, which in this case is like extremely beautiful and in sense rewarded, as you can hear from Imogen and Mark especially. So I think there's something beautiful with that. The other thing that's been beautiful about this whole contest, even just this panel, the time zones that everyone's in, it's just how this has touched really the whole world. And listening to the different music, you could almost tell what part of, I would say, what continent the artists were in when, despite all of the technology, which was also very beautiful, and the diversity that's involved in just the content or the culture that comes with the artist, just included with the actual AI as well, is really amazing. So I think it's important that this remains open access, that everyone has access to all this information, all the things that come out of it, all the processes that come out of it, so that all around the world people can evolve their music, and it's an even playing ground.
Thank you.
It's an excellent point, RJ, because you look at a lot of other industries that are really struggling to bring diversity into their AI systems. And this contest is a really great example of how globally it's happening. Everybody that, like you said, everybody that's on the call, all the teams, the diversity within the teams. It's really interesting.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I'm afraid that actually takes us already. There's so much more that we could say. I could keep this conversation going for hours, but that does take us to time. But thank you all very much, Imogen, Mark, Ajay, Uncanny Valley, for sharing your thoughts with us. Thank you for highlighting that even the public really should be thinking about diversity, should be thinking about process as much as they think about the product when we're evaluating the results of the AI Song Contest. I hope you enjoy listening to the winners again. Thank you for all of your hard work, and for joining us here this evening.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, guys. It was really insightful. It's already the end of day one. We were so happy to welcome AI Song content part of What If on a Music Tech Summit. It was a long but very, very, very interesting day. Congrats again to Energized, who won the AI Song Contest 2021. Tomorrow, day two for our summit, it's the Fans and Content Day. See you here online at noon CEST for the first keynote. Guys, have a good night, a good day. I don't know where you are, and see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.